not be judged. Condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, give will be the measure you get back. He also told them a parable. Can a blind person guide a blind person? Will not both fall into a pit? A disciple is not above the teacher, but every disciple who is fully qualified will be like the teacher. Why do you see the speck in your neighbor's eye, but do not notice the log in your own eye? Or, how can you say to your neighbor, "Friend, let me take out the speck in your eye," when you yourself do not see the log in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your neighbor's eye. Pastor Lee.
I think you all know how this saying goes. Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all? This guy, right? Because if you're the one saying it, it's you. Otherwise, you don't say it. Because if you say it and it's not you, oh, there's a whole movie that follows. If you say it and it's not you, there's internal trauma and identity crisis. Turns you from an elegant queen into a cackling white witch, right? These words from Snow White have a musicality to them. The queen makes them sound so curious. Who is the fairest one of all? But we know it really sounds more narcissistic. She asks, but only because she knows the answer. It's a question that's really designed for confirmation bias. It's only got one answer. And the answer is, you, of course. It's also got a little bit of judgment for others. It assumes others are less attractive, less commanding, less elegant, less fair. Too often we impose our own self-reflection on the world around us. Our process of self-reflection it's faulty. We're big fans of confirmation bias because we like to be right. And we like things to stay the same. We hear what we already think is true. How often does someone you care about and spend a lot of time with say something wrong, but you knew what they meant? And you say something wrong, and they know what you mean. So neither of you corrects each other because you knew what you meant. How often do we do it in our own head? We hear what we already think is true, for good and for bad. If we see ourselves as a hot mess, we will only see the mess, the mistakes, our failures. If we see ourselves as holier than thou, also known as better than y'all, we only see our righteousness. Our good intentions, we see the holy. If we see ourselves as broken, as sinful, then we only see our limits. We only see our worst choices and only remember our worst days. If we see ourselves as the smart one, the pretty one, the athletic one, the rich one, the faithful one, the dumb one, the fat one, the lonely one, the forgotten one. Too often our mirrors only show us what we expect to see. Not what we want to see, not what we need to see, not even what is true. It's not even what is true. Too often the mirrors only show us our own expectations. We go through lives living in a funhouse, mirrors that are distorted, exaggerated, mirrors that just flat lie. These mirrors are also a path to judging others. If we only see ourselves one way, how can we see the layers in others? If we only see ourselves how we expect, how can we see the complexity in other people? If we're one-dimensional ourselves, how will others ever be any more than a caricature? A cartoon deep expression of humanity. Today's scripture is just one portion of a much longer teaching series by Jesus. He's just called the 12 apostles from among all those who are following him. He's just settled down into this large open field where all those gathered can listen. Jesus has been teaching about the poor, the hungry, and the weeping, about loving your enemy, about standing up to oppression, about kindness and mercy. And then we get to hear this snippet, this section on judgment and hypocrisy. It starts out simple enough. Y'all, don't judge. He could have stopped right there. Like, the rest is an elaboration of don't judge. Don't judge, then don't condemn, which kind of feels like judging but with power behind it. Then we get a positive spin. Forgive. Don't judge, don't condemn, forgive. Sounds simple enough, right? Don't judge, forgive. It's the core of the message. Jesus then goes on to say, what you give will be given to you. My dad had an old expression, what goes around, goes around. It's not exactly, I think, what he meant to say at the time. And we knew what he meant to say, but we liked what goes around a lot better. There was a wisdom to that. You're going to get what you give. While we assume Jesus was talking about judging others, condemning others, forgiving others, he's not really specific about it. And then Jesus shifts the focus to self-reflection. How can you help another with the speck in their eye when you have a log in your own? I've always assumed there's a translation issue here. I'm not sure log is the best direct translation because I'm not sure how you get it in your eye. But I think we get the point, right? I mean, one takes tweezers, the other we're getting our chainsaw out to cut a log out. What? But it invites self-reflection. And while we assume Jesus is talking about judging others, condemning others, and forgiving others, this shift to self-reflection, this shift from communal behavior to internal reflection, external to inward, communal to personal. What if the whole thing is both? Don't judge yourself or others. Don't condemn yourself or others. Forgive yourself and others. Otherwise, you will be the blind leading the blind, both blinded by your bias. Blinded by assumptions, by expectations, blinded by self-doubt and self-righteousness, blinded by judgment and condemnation towards ourselves and others. It doesn't matter if we're ripping our neighbor for their crappy landscaping or public officials for their corrupt leadership. At some point, we have to see more in people than the things we're always harping on. It doesn't matter if we're railing against immigration policy or reflecting on the latest celebrity gossip. At some point, we have to see people as more. It doesn't matter if we're echoing the messages of our parents or buying into the critique of our critical co-workers. At some point, we have to see ourselves as more. If not, we're blind. And if we're blind, we're hypocritical. Telling others to love while limiting our ability to love them. and telling others to love themselves while refusing to make room for our own self-care. Refusing to see it in our own mirror. Great message, Lee. We could have all come up with that. How do we do it? Come on. How do we have honest critique of ourselves without beating ourselves up? Anybody figured that one out yet? How do we have honest critique of our leaders without crossing the line to tearing them down? How do we have honest critique of our relationships and those we love, try to help them grow without being hypocritical, without being the blind leading the blind? Jesus talks about removing the log from our own eye first. So let's start with that. Let's just start where Jesus starts. The personal practice, the self-reflection, a prayerful approach. Sometimes we can reach out to friends to give us a different lens on ourselves. Sometimes they see things we miss, mentors and loved ones. Sometimes therapy is a powerful tool for seeing ourselves. Sometimes we need to look back into the past to find some healing. Sometimes we need to look back to rediscover something that was lost, a piece of ourself we've forgotten. Sometimes we can do this journey alone. Other times we need a lot of help from others, from God, and from what Parker Palmer calls the inner teacher. The inner teacher. Parker talks about creating circles of trust. People who don't tell us what to do or give advice. People who ask questions, open-ended, honest questions. People who help us listen to our own inner teacher, that voice of God inside us, helping us overcome our binary either-or view of the world and see ourselves more in a both-and kind of way. If we can see ourselves in new ways, if we can see ourselves in more whole ways, if we can stop judging and condemning ourselves, if we can look into the mirror with honesty, truth and grace, and forgiveness, well, then maybe we can look at others the same way. But we got to start with us. Then maybe we look at others with the same both and. Maybe we can see their humanity as clearly as we see their faults. Maybe we can see their humanity as fully as God sees them. In these days where there are so many hurts and injustices, how do we look on upon our neighbor and not see an enemy? In these days of division and exploitation, how do we look upon our oppressor and not see their anger, but see their hurt and their fear? In these days of blame, judgment, and condemnation, how do we see the good in others and work for justice and accountability? How do we respect the humanity of others and confront times where they are disrespecting people's humanity? If we listen to Jesus, it starts with the mirror, looking at ourselves honestly and with grace and forgiveness, so that we can look at others and give grace and forgiveness. Then we can ask better questions, honest questions of our society. Then we can ask better questions, honest questions of our church. Then we can ask better questions, honest questions of our neighbors, our family, our friends. We can ask questions that help us all listen to our inner teacher. We can flip questions from blame and shame to something different, a new narrative. We can flip questions to healing hurts and soothing fears. We must wade past the stock answers. We must dive deeper than the old stories we keep telling. We must see something new in the mirror. We must dive into complicated waters complicated relationships, into the gray areas, the both and spaces of our world. We must do better than the hate the sin, love the sinner crap. We must do better than the agree to disagree pleasantries and crap. It's more complicated than that, and both are an excuse to dismiss the humanity of the people next to us without us having to do any work whatsoever. In the South, we still use the bless their heart. It means we've completely dismissed them without taking any accountability for our judgment. We all have ways of doing it. We all have tropes we fall back into that allow us to dismiss the humanity of another without confronting the ways we fail to show grace and love to ourselves and that person. Because we bless ourselves a lot too. Bless my heart, I'm just not smart enough. Bless my heart, I just didn't work hard enough. And usually we just drop the bless my heart and beat ourselves up. We can't give them grace till we do it for ourselves. We can't keep telling ourselves what sinners we are and never see what forces for good we are. We can't keep taking an old theological line that's not even in the Bible and beating ourselves up with it and miss Jesus telling us that it's about not judging and condemning, but forgiving. The words of Jesus confront the old stories, the old mirror we keep looking into. This original sin mirror that the church has handed down for way too long is not the mirror that Jesus seems to be looking into. It's not the one God handed us when it said you are created in the image of God, when God breathed life into us and said you are filled with the breath of God. How did we get here? Telling ourselves all the things we shouldn't do, all the things we should have done. As an old colleague of ours always reminds us, we should on ourselves a lot more than we should. We must do better. We have to look into the mirror and dare to see something new. Dare to see Christ in our neighbor. Dare to see God at work within us. We have to look into the mirror, all of us, not looking for the fairest, the prettiest, the smartest, the nicest, the meanest, the richest, the winner, the loser. We all have to look into the mirror, all of us, with forgiveness in our hearts. Tweezers and chainsaws in our hands, but forgiveness in our hearts and a willingness to see what God is about to do. Amen.